Thank you, Arnel, for enlightening us on the importance of journalists for human rights. Our next speaker is new to Montreal, but not to the struggle for human rights. Florah Terah was one of approximately 200 women that ran for parliament in the Kenyan elections in 2007. She was one of several women who were abducted, tortured, and abused because they dared to run for public office in Kenya. Hospitalized for weeks and unable to canvass properly, she lost her bid for election. Worse was still to come for Tera. In March 2008, her only child, a 19-year-old footballer, was murdered in Nairobi. Tera's case is one of several case studies highlighted in Amnesty International's 2008 report on the state of world's human rights. Now more than ever, Ms. Tera is committed to mobilizing an end to gender-based violence. Flora is the executive director of an NGO she started calling Tera Against Terror, a civil society organization that campaigns on behalf of victims of gender-based violence based in Nairobi. Ms. Tera has diplomas in community development, social work, and business administration. Ms. Tera was director of Community Hope Initiative, an organization that focused on reproductive health issues for women for 10 years in Nairobi. She has been a director on women's education, drafting a constitution for women's rights. She developed partnerships with and coordinated the activities of other women's organizations in Nairobi. Ms. Tera has been keynote speaker at many events organized by Amnesty International, Canadian Lawyers Abroad, Jean Sauvé Foundation in Montreal, and at several Canadian universities throughout the country. Ms. Tera has addressed meetings attended by influential leaders like Professor Wangari Maathai, David Suzuki, Bill Clinton, and the former Governor General Michel Jean. Subjects have included gender-based violence, women's political participation, HIV/AIDS, and reproductive health cancer, women's courage and resilience. She's a published author of They Never Killed My Spirit, But They Murdered My Only Child, her autobiography. And her next book, Beyond Pain, is due out this fall. Flora will speak about her personal experiences and youth empowerment. Please welcome Flora Terah.
Thank you so much. I think I'm too short for this. Thank you so much, and good evening all. As you've been told, my name is Florah Terah. I come from Kenya. Most of you know from the south, we have a biological son called Obama. But tonight, I'm not speaking so much about him, but I'll do comment a little about my disappointment that I've been clearly building in the last few days. When I was growing up, I started experiencing disparities, gender disparities. But I did not know that this would open another chapter in my life. I went to school, of course, and I went to school because my parents are educated, and my father saw the need for us to be out of the homes. Not actually so much, because we were not told anything about the importance of education. And I wish I know what I know today. I would truly, truly embrace that education wholeheartedly. In primary school, I felt segregated so much. One, because there were many of my friends in primary school were going through female genital cutting, and I always questioned my mother, why not me? Why can't I go through the same and be like any other girl? I'm told I'm dirty because I've not gone through female genital cutting. And being 7 girls in the family, I would have been supported by my other sisters. This I told my mother, I told my aunties. Little did I know that what I was really thinking and trying to advocate for was a violation of women's rights. Well, this did not happen. Later I went to high school, where I first learned English. I guess that's why my accent is different from the other two speakers. And in this school, there were so many people from around the country. I realized that it's not just female genital cutting that was happening within my country. There were other very, very harmful cultural practices. But then I did not call it harmful cultural practices because I didn't know. I did not know what it was all about. The girls that went through female genital cutting do not explain what they go through. The women that do it do not explain what it is to go through female genital cutting. I realized that there was also child marriage. I realized that very young girls were getting married to men old enough to be their grandfathers. I also realized there was another one called window classing, where if your husband dies of any disease, and that time was HIV and AIDS, you would be cleansed a night before it's buried. I realized also there was wife sharing from different communities. This made me shocked. It really made me shocked. I was like, who advocates for this?
Excuse me?
Yeah?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I did not understand the last word sharing, did you say?
Wife sharing.
Oh, okay.
Sharing wives. Thank you. And after I finished high school, I did go to college, but I got pregnant out of wedlock. I had to go back home, deliver my child, and become a mother. And this is when my life turned around. I was expecting at a very young age, and the women that I was going with to postnatal clinics were much older than me. The D-Day came when I was to give birth to my child, and the world opened up to the oppression women face. What he was talking about, giving birth on the road, is nothing but just a quarter of what I'm about to tell you. Women gave birth on the floor, others on the way to the maternity, to hospital. We shared a bed, 4 women, a very tiny bed. 2 on this side who have gone through cesarean, 2 on the other side who have given birth normally. I asked these women, because they were much older than me, how many kids do you have? 10, 12, 13. And I asked them, why would you get a second baby, a third baby, the 4th baby, the 5th baby on these conditions? We know no other way, child. I was so sad. I was so sad to see other women being beaten because of pain. Like when they're in labor pain, you scream, you're beaten. And this is Dara beating. Being dropped out of the beds. This is also happening in the 21st century at the National Hospital of Kenya. Today, what I faced 21 years ago is the same thing that is happening. Women are still giving birth on the floor. Women are still being detained in hospital because they cannot be able to pay their maternity fee. And when I was leaving that hospital with my child, I had tears. Not because there was physical pain, but because my heart was breathing for everyone that was in that hospital. I said I'll do something to change. But I didn't know how to do it. So when my kid grew a little bit older, I asked my father to take me to school so that I can help the community. I went and did community development. It was a time when AIDS was spreading like bushfire. And I had to go and create awareness on HIV and AIDS. How would I do this? when I'm not supposed to talk about sex, when I'm not supposed to talk about death. This is our traditions. We hardly mention sex, we hardly mention death. You're talking on prevention. You're talking on treatment. You're talking on someone who's just about to die. What are you going to tell them? It was the most difficult time of my life. But I said, because of the commitment I had within me, I'm not going to be embarrassed of doing this. I'm going to call things by their own name, by their real names. I started with a community that was really, really practicing the very harmful cultural practices. Child marriage was being done every other day. Women were supposed to be very far from the men. Information is power. What you tell the women, they cannot communicate it to the men. So we had to look for a way of bringing the women together and bringing the men together and talking about this AIDS that was killing each and every person. It was at first very, very difficult, but at the end of 9 months, we were able to sit it and talk to them. Talk to them about the harmful cultural practices, female genital cutting, wife sharing in this particular community, child marriage, where a 70-year-old man with 5 wives is marrying an 8-year-old child and sharing other women with his friends. If you say that's not the best way of transmitting the virus, then you're wrong. I saw so many people suffer, and I did ask the men, do you really know there's AIDS? They said yes, but AIDS is not in this village. AIDS is with you people that are in town. I felt so sorry for these people. Really sorry for them. And all along, I knew I was mopping the floor when the taps were still running, or treating a wood, dressing a wood without treating it. Because all these harmful culture were entrenched in our constitution, in the laws of Kenya, as the customary laws. So how do you take someone to court when the law protects what exactly is doing? I'll give you an example of the circumcision time when the girls are going down to be circumcised, down to the liver. 16, 20 girls are circumcised at the same time, using the same weapon. If one of the girls is HIV positive, it goes round. It becomes a vicious circle. Same with wife sharing. Same with several polygamy. We wrote reports as civil society. But where there's no political will, then you can't get what you want. You cannot change any leader with a document where they signed that document called the Constitution of Kenya. Thinking of the Constitution of Kenya, I really hated that time being a Kenyan, because I knew the Constitution was designed in a way to oppress the women of Kenya. Because the women of Kenya were the ones that were going through all these things that contribute to HIV and AIDS. And policy was not very near me. I didn't know how to do it. There were people that were doing it. There were people that were agitating for change. But when I discussed more with the women movement in Kenya, I realized that we have to keep agitating for change. We have to address the issues of a constitution. Many of who were fighting for this change to have a new constitution in Kenya had already fled the country. Others were killed. Others had been silenced through torture. So they were not so much talking about it. But when many of us joined the civil society and started saying it's about time we got a new constitution, it's about time we changed the laws, we were heard. They started changing it slowly by first giving us the multi-party system. That was in 1992. And later, 2 years ago, we got a new constitution. So at least now, we can prosecute those that practice female genital cutting. We can do so much with a new constitution. But then, let us not start opening the champagne bottles yet, because it's the same leadership that is denying us just the basic rights to live in Kenya. A while ago, when I was training women on gender and governance, a program run by United Nations Funds for Women, they said they're going to move from talks to action. This was in my district, Meru district. And they said that if you really want us to get into coffee factories and tea factories as leaders, if you really want us to get to the local authorities as leaders, lead by example. We want you to be the member of parliament. It never occurred at any one time in my mind that I would ever stand and speak to a group of women and men, telling them that this is what we are going to do. It never occurred to me. But then, having trained women, the women having said, let us start with you, I said I'm not going to sit at the periphery, or I'm not going to preach water and drink wine. So I said I'm going to consult my family, and my family was my only child, my mother, and my siblings. Those were the first people that I consulted. My son was extremely happy, extremely happy. A teenager thinking the mother is going to be a member of parliament. And I had to sit and really do lots of talking. I told him, it's not about us, son. It's about changing. I want to see my grandchildren, your children, living in a better country. My family, my mom was like, okay. My brother was like, what do you have? Do you have the money? No, but I've got the votes. I went to my extended family or my cousins. They were very supportive. They said they would support me financially. My friends were also too supportive. But there's one group of people that just the mention of it would send shivers to me. And that was my clan, the cultural gatekeepers. And finally I didn't go to them. And I've never heard from them. I don't think they know I'm in Canada. But they were nailed by mouth. They could not speak to me. When I was talking to them, it was like the wind was blowing my mouth. They were like, okay, we'll send your mother, we'll see what to do. Till today they're saying what to do. My bed was getting very strong. I was among the 25 women that were likely to get to parliament. Many of my opponents called me, that time we were just 5. Many of them called me and told me to step down. They're going to support me this year, 2012. I say, if I have to step down, then we have to go to the people and ask them if I could. Let's call a debate. They did not want. It was a very, very high time when people were fed up. In my constituency, which you call riding here, we are very poor, very poor. Yet, I would say, we have the best coffee, we have the best tea, exported. When I get to most of the Canadian shops, I look at coffee made in Kenya, tea made in Kenya. Really, my English is not that good. I don't know whether it's made or produced. And I get so annoyed because the farmers are too poor. The coffee barons are the ones that are too rich. We have so much food in the farms, but the foods are rotting in the farms because the roads are impassable. The hospital I gave birth to my son those many years ago is in the same condition today. And leaders who come in say, to hell with the health sector, to hell with education. They take their children to private schools. They take their children to private hospitals. I feel so sad when I talk about that because I know how many people are dying every day because of preventable diseases. I feel so sad today that the person who was elected from the South America, Obama, we had, the time he won the elections, we had a day off. All the offices were closed because we were celebrating one of our own. It is so sad, so sad that today he has discontinued the treatment on HIV and AIDS. I would wonder if this is not genocide. What then is it? We also have to blame ourselves because we have completely misplaced our priorities. We are looking at the West to feed our children, to clothe our children, to educate our children, to treat the sick. And this is all because of mismanaged funds. The monies that we give for primary education buys a fleet of cars for the political class. It's a shame. It is a shame. What I was addressing as a politician was reconciliatory leadership, where we stop talking about personalities, talk about ideologies. A people-driven leadership, where people will tell us what to do and work with us, not lead the people when the people are at the back. That is where we went wrong. But soon we are going to correct it, because there's going to be an evolution in Kenya, and it's going to be a non-violent revolution. I'm so happy that many women have taken up leadership at the moment. I'm so happy that they look at me as their role model, because I stood and said, I'm not going to negotiate with anyone when it comes to my rights. My political participation is my right. It is my right to choose whoever I want to be my president. And with all this, they decided to silence me. On September 7th, I was attacked, tortured, beaten up senselessly. My neck disc was broken. All my hair shaved, fed with human feces, and left for the dead. In the hospital bed, I've written all this in my book that is on sale tonight. I said, no retreat, no surrender, because there's nothing that will come out of my mouth. I was emotionally tortured, and I never thought that I would ever stand in front of people and talk again. A waste eater. That's what the gutter press said, the alternative press. But I thank God that we are very responsible journalists in Kenya who said, as it was, that was very inhuman. 6 months later, soon after the elections, they murdered my only child. It was a way of intimidating me further. But I stand here today because I know I still have that very strong spirit. It's through my speaking around Canada and North America that will make people realize that we have 3 problems in my country. The first problem is leadership. The second problem is leadership. And the third problem is leadership. And unless we change leadership in Kenya, we shall be all panhandlers. We will always beg. And I would challenge the Canadian government to think twice in when they're giving aid to Kenya. Let the leaders be held accountable for every single cent they take from the Canadian taxpayers. We don't need a fleet of cars. There's so much traffic jam in Kenya. What we need is food on the table. What we need is basic rights for those children that are dying in the IDP camps. And this cannot be done by people who are serving Kenyan from the depths of their pockets, not from the depths of their hearts. We need transformative leadership in Kenya. We need reconciliatory leadership in Kenya. And without this, I'm so sorry, and I'm so sorry, and I'm so sorry again. Canada is wasting the taxpayers' money. So, I stand before you. I'm counting a little bit of days to go back home and serve. I've taken Canada as my country of hope to get myself back, to heal the pain of losing an only child. But I can be very honest with you that this spirit is so strong. Thank you so much.